We'll see if the Eagles had more hits or misses with some of the deals they handed out with Jason here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. What's going on, Jay? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to be on.
Yeah, and they've handed out a lot of deals. They've been very busy here, so let's kind of look at these one by one. Let's start with Lane Johnson because he got a big deal, basically over $35 million in guarantees. So do you think this was a smart move by Howie Roseman? Because Roseman's been known in the past to do these sneaky deals where it looks like it's good in theory, and then the back end of those deals, everybody feels like holding out. That was very prevalent during the Reed era. But how about this deal for Lane Johnson?
I think this is a good deal provided they're going to switch him to left tackle. If they're going to switch him to left tackle, getting out ahead of time and making this contract happen now, they actually got him on relatively favorable terms, even though that annual value number is real big and the guaranteed number sounds real big. In reality, they were going to pick up an option on him next year anyway that was going to pay him over $11 million. They're actually going to save money over the next 2 years by doing it the way that they did. They're also going to keep the market from getting ahead of them and having to pay him more down the line. All assuming that he plays left tackle. The guarantees in the contract, most of them are injury only. They won't actually become real guarantees until that league year happens. So I think it's a pretty overall. First reaction to it was probably the same as most people on mine. I said, wow, that's kind of strange for a right tackle. But it's pretty clear that he'll be replacing Jason Peters, if not this year, then the year.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I think, feel the same way, that if he's playing left tackle. The question is, has he even been a good right? I mean, yeah, we're not saying he stinks or anything, but is he an elite right tackle? I mean, if someone said, hey, we paid him because he's elite right tackle, is that even valid?
Probably not. It's one of these things with contracts, and it comes up, I think, a lot. These players who are very highly drafted, there is always a feeling that draft status sometimes kind of overrules just about anything else, provided that the player is decent. He's certainly a decent player. You have the turnover in the coaching staff, so I'm sure some of the blame is probably placed on the coaching staff beforehand. So I can see both sides of that argument. But I think the fact that he was picked so high in the draft is probably one of the reasons why he ended up where he ended up.
Jason Fitzgerald, overthecap.com. What about Curry? Here's a guy who hasn't played a whole heck of a lot, but he got $47 million with $23 million guaranteed money. What'd you think of that deal?
Of all the contracts they did, that was the one that surprised me the most. He hasn't had a start yet. He's basically been a situational player, 30% of the snaps, 35% of the snaps. He had one good year when it came to sacking the quarterback. I think he had 9 sacks 2 years ago. Other than that, he's basically been a 4-sack kind of player. That really seemed very high to me. I haven't seen the full details on that yet, so I can't comment as much on the way the structure is. Maybe it's structured very favorably for Philadelphia to where it carries a big number, but most of those numbers are way down the line when he has a chance to prove himself in more of a starting role. But I thought they went a little bit overboard on that one.
Yeah, and that's a tough one because he's kind of been playing out of scheme fit for him the last couple of years. In the limited time they gave him, he proved that he can get to the quarterback, but that's a tough way to negotiate when you've got such limited time on a guy, but he's performed in that limited time. So, I guess that one was a real tough one. They were in a tough spot with him, switching to the 4-3, and then not really having an option if he was to walk out the door.
Yeah, I think that plays a role in it as well. That you have to look at the market. You have to see who you can replace him with. And they might not have been comfortable with anyone else that was out there. They may have figured that this was the best value that they could get. Last year, Brandon Graham, it was kind of a simple. Didn't play a whole bunch. He played more than Curry, but not a whole lot. And he didn't really get a lot of interest as a free agent, so they were able to bring him back. They may have looked at it this year and said, there's not a lot of players who are going to be out there as free agents, which is going to make Curry's demand go sky high, and we really need him next year. And so they may have bit the lip a little bit and overpaid on it just to make sure they have a productive player in line.
5-year deal for Zach Ertz, $42 million, 4th highest paid tight end. I think that's since been surpassed, but he's in the top 5 now. Zach Ertz what are the advantages for the Eagles with that deal?
Again, I think that's just getting ahead of it. But last year, you had the Julius Thomas contract, which I think kind of made the tight end numbers really start to jump up. Uh, even though you have the better player like a Rob Gronkowski, that contract is so old. I think the feeling is that all these young players, the Travis Kelce's, the Tyler Eiferts, they're all going to just keep pushing one another higher and higher in the salary range. So I think it just makes sense to, again, get out ahead of the curve, be first one, and you'll end up with a player on the lowest cost contract. So I think he's on a $8.5 million a year deal. Kelsey signed about later, and you can argue between the two contracts, but at least in terms of annual value, Kelsey came in, I think, around 9.3 or 9.4. And I'm sure whenever Eifert signs later on, he's going to end up above Kelsey. So I think the Eagles did the smart thing by getting out in front of it and, getting that deal done before the prices got even higher if they had waited.
Jason, I want to get your opinion on DeMarco Murray because, he wasn't a fit. They got a new coaching staff. There was reports today that he's not happy. Then he kind of tried to put them under the rug. I guess he's doing the media tour today, and he said, I want to be here. But he has a huge cap hit. What are some of the Eagles' options with him?
Really, the only option that I see with him is they're going to have to find a trade partner. And basically the two sides will have to work out an agreement as to what the new team is actually willing to pay him. He still has $9 million in guarantees that have to be paid out. So maybe the two teams will be willing to split the difference. A team will take him, say, we'll take him for 4.8 guaranteed. You guys pay the rest. And that's probably the situation that the Eagles are going to find themselves in if they really want to move on from him. Otherwise, to release him, it costs $13 million against the cap, and they'd have to cut him a check for $9 million on top of that. So I just don't see that one being feasible from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, that $13 million and then the $9 million more. I mean, it's that's a big one there. So far, Howie Roseman, he's taken over for Chip Kelly, basically running the day-to-day for now. Who knows what the heck's going on? They've hit a pause button on their search for a new personnel guy. But when you look at what the Eagles have done this offseason, Howie Roseman back in charge, how do you think he's done?
I think pretty good. I say that the Eagles have typically done business in terms of getting deals done early. One of the things you like about this, they're getting it done before the NFL sets the salary cap. Who knows what that number will be? Most people think it's going to be somewhere between 150, 153 million. Maybe it'll be 156. Maybe it'll be 158. The quicker you get in under it, the better off you're going to be. They used that to their advantage with Jason Kelsey a couple of years ago where they signed him before there was a big jump in the salary cap. That jump was kind of unexpected. They got him on pretty good terms that way. So I kind of like what they're doing here. They're locking up their core players by doing it early. It's going to help them with their cap. It's going to help them with flexibility down the line. So I think overall they've done a pretty good job.
Quick one, Fletcher Cox, Sam Bradford, those two guys could be next. Can they make both those guys fit?
Yeah, they can definitely make them fit. They should have somewhere around $20 million in cap space even after the Curry deal. So that they have the room to do it. The Cox one, in light of the Curry deal, is probably going to be a lot more difficult because he's a better player. He's going to command top dollar. Bradford, that can be tricky as well. I'm not sure what the thinking would be with that, but they could definitely fit both those guys in.
And also be a player in free agency if they want to be?
Yeah, if they want to. Cox is under contract this year already for a cap hit of around $7 million or so. So they'll actually probably bring down with any extension on him. Bradford, sign him. I doubt the cap number would be too high in the first year. The only way it's really going to be that high is if they have to use the franchise tag on him. And I don't view him as a franchiser, so I don't think that they would do a $1 million deal just to get another look at him.
That's where it gets interesting. Can they? There were some reports that he was asking for $25 million. Do they franchise him? Is he worth it? There's not a lot of great options out there. He's going to be a really interesting case here for Philadelphia. Jason Fitzgerald, overthecap.com. I guess the last one is the Selleck deal. We didn't talk about that, but that one seemed like more of a minor deal. But that's a lot of money they have wrapped up into tight ends.
It is, but, I think the Eagles probably figure that they need Ertz to be much more of a full-time receiver and that they can use Selleck in that secondary role where he can help out on the line. He can also go out and, catch 300 yards a year, be that safety outlet kind of guy. They lowered his cap hit. They only guaranteed him $1 more million than he was already scheduled to make. So again, it's more of a cap manipulation than really a legitimate, big-time contract or anything like that. So I think they just, use that deal to kind of manage the cap and make sure that they had a secondary option on the team for next year.
All right, there you go. A little recap of all the moves the Eagles have made. And, of course, Murray today coming out with that news. We'll see what the future holds for DeMarco Murray. But I agree with you, Jason. It's going to be tough to move on from him. Jason Fitzgerald, overthecap.com. Check out all of the player contracts and related news, salary cap related, at overthecap.com. Thanks, Jay.
Thanks a lot.